So we are jumping from fats to batters and dough. What is the connection here? Or are we just jumping around? No, there is a significant connection. Fats are almost always added to batters and dough because they play a significant role in the structure of the final products of the batters and dough, which is different types of bread that we're going to discuss in the next YouTube slide. If you are looking for a challenge, pay attention to the link between fat, batters, and dough on this set of slides, and then later on the next set of slides. The connection is actually very basic, but as you go through it, I believe that it will pique your interest. In this chapter, we will review the main functions of the ingredients in batters and dough, look at characteristics that separate the two, and learn the processes that occur when we mix batters and dough. Batters and dough use many of the same ingredients, but they are not the same thing. There is a main structural difference between the two. Know what the structural difference is. Batters and dough will generally have the same ingredients. Despite the structural difference between the two, the ingredients in each have the exact same function. There are a few points in this chapter that we will discuss these ingredients, and we'll highlight a few of these in the next YouTube video as well, but know the main functions of each of these ingredients. And to know the functions of mixing batter and dough, and understand what happens when we under and over mix batters and dough. Batters and dough are the precursors to bread products. In creating these, we must efficiently mix all of the ingredients and develop gluten to create a final optimal structure. The difference between batters and dough is simply related to its texture. Batters are very thin and can be typically poured. Doughs are strong enough to be kneaded and do not have the high liquid content that you find in batters. These are the common ingredients that you find in batters and dough. All of these ingredients play some type of role in the batter and dough and creating that final bread product. All of them do play some role in flavor, but they all are related to the structure of the final bread product as well. So they do more than just add flavor. The first and main ingredient in batters and dough is flour. Flour is largely related to the structure of the foods through the development of gluten. Most people, and don't be confused by this, most people believe that flour contains gluten. This is sort of true, but technically it does not. Flour contains precursors to gluten. These are proteins known as gliadin and glutenin, which turn into gluten when flour is added to them. The definition of leavening is to make light and porous. Think about what happens when bread is baked. You place a large portion of dough into a baking pan and heat this. As this is heated, it expands significantly, multiple times its original size, until it is that final product. It is like somebody places a balloon inside of the dough and the dough is heated. The balloon inside of it expands and creates a much larger volume in the bread product. This happens through the addition of leavening agents. Yeast is the most common leavening agent that performs this role and could be considered the balloon. However, instead of the large empty space in a balloon, you have a more spaced out interior of the bread. Without the addition of a leavening agent, the bread would not develop and would be much flatter, as you can see in the picture of the unleavened bread on this screen. There are some leavening gases that are produced during the baking process. They are not added. This also helps to separate bread molecules so that the bread remains light and porous. However, without the addition of a non-gas leavening agent, the bread would not expand much. It requires the addition of a leavening agent in order to achieve this. Fats play two major roles in baking. They increase the tenderness and then assist as a leavening agent. We have previously talked about fat as a tenderizer with flour and gluten products. Fat increases tenderness automatically when it is added to a food. It does this in a unique way when it is added to gluten. Fat droplets will coat the gluten molecules, which tenderizes the individual gluten strands. The gluten molecules, which are a bit tougher by themselves, become softer and have a creamier texture. So when we eat a piece of pie, the crust is soft and allows our teeth to sink right into the center of the pie that holds it together. Fat also plays a small role in leavening. By trapping air bubbles that are responsible for the expansion of bread, fats allow leavening to effectively occur. When putting together a batter or dough, it is essential to add liquid in some form. Let's take a closer look at doughs. The first step to creating a dough is to mix flour with water. The flour by itself is powdery and separates easily. However, when you add water, there is a chemical reaction that occurs that ensures that the dough becomes one connected form. This binding occurs because water changes the proteins in the flour that it comes into contact with to gluten. This gluten is what connects dough and brings it together due to its adhesiveness. Gluten can stretch as well, which allows the dough to be kneaded and adjusted to fit whatever shape the baker of the bread desires. Eggs play many different roles in the development of bread products. Through their fat content, they help to tenderize the strands of gluten. They contain some liquid in them as well, which is going to help develop the gluten. Also, eggs contain lecithin, which is an emulsifier that will help fat stay within water. Helping to keep this fat in water and distribute this more evenly throughout the bread is going to create a smoother and creamier texture. And finally, eggs also play a role as a leavening agent. Sugar is strongly attracted to water. By retaining water in a baked product, this baked food will remain soft and moist. Protein and gluten compete with sugar for water, and with water, protein and gluten will form very tough final products. By providing an adequate amount of sugar, the absorption of water between sugar, protein, and gluten is more balanced. This helps to prevent an overly tough product from forming. When we mix together batters and dough, we develop the gluten and mix the ingredients together. Some care is required in mixing batters and dough because in order to create a bread product with good texture and good flavor, we must ensure a uniform distribution of ingredients, the minimal loss of a leavening agent, and the optimal development of gluten. The uniform distribution of ingredients means that there is a consistent amount of each of the ingredients throughout the entire bread product. This ensures that the bread has the same texture, flavor, and consistency in every single bite. There is a certain amount of leavening agent that is required for the optimal fluffiness of all bread products. If the baker is careless and allows some of the yeast to be lost due to heavy kneading or stirring, the product will simply not develop optimally. And finally, it is possible to over and underdevelop the gluten. Gluten that is overdeveloped will create such strong bonds that the breads will become excessively tough and the gluten strands will be much thicker and intertwined, causing small tunnels within the bread. Underdeveloping gluten will create a weak structure that falls apart very easily and is much tougher. This slide highlights the mixture of a batter through the muffin method and a dough through the pastry or biscuit method. The goal of this slide is to show that there are many similarities between the two, between mixing doughs and batters, but also to show that there are very specific times that certain ingredients are added in order to create an optimal final taste and structure. We will quickly run through each. For the muffin method, you start by mixing the dry ingredients together. So far, pretty simple. The eggs are beaten and the liquid and fat or oil are added to the eggs. These ingredients are then mixed together. Then the liquid ingredients are blended in with the dry ingredients, and depending on the texture that you are looking for, the amount of stirring will vary. Using the pastry and biscuit method, You will mix the liquid and dry ingredients just as you do in the muffin method, but in this method the fat, and a solid fat has to be used here, is added to the dry ingredients through a process known as cutting in. This involves adding small amounts of a fat like butter or coconut oil to the dry ingredients very slowly and then mixing them in gradually. This specific action is what produces flakiness in pastries. After this is together, the dough is lightly kneaded and then cut into desired shapes.